Let's just do this. Yeah, that works okay. I'll get our wine. So the audio, so the video and the audio is on. So you're gonna have to watch your mouth while we're in church.
Oh, no.
Yes. For fuck's, sorry, people.
I suggest if you're not in the service, you may want to mute yourself.
Great.
So Norm, I'm going to remove that allow participants to unmute themselves
Okay,
for
thank you.
now.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get the correct link here to send out again. Thursday, there it is.
Norm, can you just show me a thumbs up when you're ready to go live?
Yeah, we can go live anytime, John, and I will just start. I will tread water here for a little while because people usually take a few minutes to join on Zoom, and we're apparently having having a problem with one of the links. So we're just giving everybody a little bit of time to sign in before we actually begin the formal program. Welcome those of you who managed to get through without a problem. There apparently one of the links that went out is not working as well as we had hoped. So I've just sent out, if you're, well, if you're watching this, the link worked okay for you. So I can't really speak to those who for whom it's not working. So we'll be beginning in about 2 minutes. I'm anticipating a relatively small group and a relatively informal time together. The chat will be open during the service, but I probably won't be able to monitor it continuously during the service. But I will return to it at the end of the service to answer any questions that anyone might have during the service. So I'm gonna wait till exactly 5 minutes after 7 to officially start the service, but I'll fill the silence in the meantime so that people know that we are waiting just to begin the service and allow everyone to make connection. The details. So we're waiting till 5 minutes after 7 to begin the service to allow people to connect. I still see new people coming into the service. Welcome. The chat function is open, and if anyone wants to leave a message there, please do so. I may not be able to respond immediately, but before the service is over, if you've left a question or something there, I'll try to make sure that we respond appropriately. Okay, I think I'm ready to begin the service or the program for tonight. Good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining this Zoom call or for watching on YouTube. Now, if you would have preferred to watch on YouTube, if you're having any technical problems, we are on YouTube as well, although we didn't publicize the link. If you were to Google UUCH YouTube, that'll take you pretty well directly to our channel on YouTube. All of our services for the last 2 years have been online or hybrid. And so the recorded services are actually at that YouTube channel as well. So if you're interested in watching a complete service, a regular service, then that would be the place to go. Go to YouTube and do a search for Universalist Halifax. We'll get you there. Or just Google UUCH YouTube. So my name is Norm Horofker, and I'm the minister of the Universalist Unitarian Church here in Halifax. Our congregation was established here in 1837. I made it in my work normally by part-time staff, including Jessica Friesen, our music director, Marie-Claude Leroux, who leads our programs for children and youth, and Stephen Butler is our custodian. And then in addition, we have a wealth of volunteers who keep the wheels turning. And John Pickle was with us tonight as our technical, our technical director, one of our very important volunteers. Tonight's event is intended as an introduction to Unitarian Universalism and the church here in Halifax as part of the United Nations Interfaith Harmony Week celebrations. I expect the program to last about 30 minutes, followed by questions if there are any, or kind of an open discussion. We can do that if you would like to stay around for that. As I mentioned, since the pandemic was declared 2 years ago, we've been doing our services online. And when health regulations permitted, we've been doing hybrid services where some people attend in person and other people attend online over Zoom, or as I say, on YouTube. Tonight's service, however, is strictly online, and I'm conducting this service from my study here at home. Tonight, as I mentioned, I'll be doing my best to monitor the chat feed from Zoom, although I'll be doing that intermittently. And if you have any questions, please put them there if you're comfortable with that technology. Otherwise, at the end of the service, we'll allow time for questions and comments. Some members of our congregation are also joining the service, and that will certainly help with discussions. You might be able to ask a question of someone other than the minister as to what we're all about. Before we begin the service, we'll pause to do, as we do every Sunday, to acknowledge that we are on unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Halifax acknowledges that the first peoples to call this land sacred We're the Mi'kmaq. We live and work on lands that are by law, they're unceded territories. As we gather, we pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, acknowledging our history of colonization and oppression. We're called to live humbly and in right relationship with all of our neighbors. May the stories of the land in which we gather, stories of oppression and vulnerability, of pain and compassion, suffering and courage, shape how we now choose to stand with each other. It's a tradition in most Unitarian Universalist congregations to begin the service by lighting a chalice and to end the service by extinguishing that flame. This evening, I'll light this small chalice here. I hope you can see. I'll light it here in my study, following these words that will be displayed on your screen. Let there be light, the light of joy, the light of happiness, the light of contentment. May it illuminate our paths and fill our lives with peace. And let there be dark, for it is from our dark places that we're brought forward, tried and tested, and impelled towards growth. It is in these places that we realize compassion and learn to love. And there was day and there was night, and there was joy and there was sorrow, and it was good. So again, may I say welcome. I'm delighted to introduce you to our faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism, known simply as UU. We're the result of the merger of two liberal Christian religions, Universalists and Unitarians, and hence the rather long name. The church in Halifax was actually founded as a Universalist church, and so we chose in our name to use Universalist ahead of Unitarian, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax. The Universalists, at a time when many Christian churches were preaching about hellfire and damnation, chose to see God as the spirit of love. And they rejected the idea of eternal punishment in hell. They taught that universally we would all be united with God eventually. Unitarians couldn't accept the idea of the Christian Trinity. It was too complicated. They thought that if there was a God, there was only one God behind all the various versions of God that exist in the world. That's our history. Our faith tradition continues to evolve. We don't believe that revelation is sealed. Over time, we've become a tradition that accepts that each of us is on a journey through life. Each of us develops our own understanding of faith and spirituality. We believe that all people of goodwill can learn from each other without the need to convince anyone that someone is right and someone else is wrong. We recognize that our name, which includes the word church, is an artifact of our founding, but perhaps turns some people away who have a specific image of what a church is. We're actually have some discussions underway considering whether we want to continue to use the word church in our title. Maybe something more like community would be appropriate. So what you're going to hear tonight is from the minister, but my understanding or spirituality is just one of many within our congregation. As minister, I do not claim to have all of the answers. Today, about half the members of this congregation consider themselves to be humanist, atheist, or agnostic, without a belief in a traditional God, certainly, and in some cases without a belief in a God of any description. The focus of our faith is not on God, but it's on individual spiritual growth and social justice. There are about 50 UU congregations across Canada. And when we come together, we're guided by 8 principles. They're listed on the slide. First is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Second is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The third is acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. The fourth is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The fifth is the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The sixth is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The seventh is respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And the eighth principle, added just recently, individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and systematic barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and our institutions. So that's sort of a brief overview and an introduction to Unitarian Universalism. Very brief, but I hope it gives you a flavor of who we are. And now maybe I can talk a little more specifically about our congregation. Our congregation meets in a beautiful old house on English Street. Actually, it's the second oldest house in the south end of Halifax. It's a nice picture taken in the evening. We have a beautiful front yard and backyard, great location for weddings, small weddings, birthday parties, picnics, celebrations. And inside we have space for about 80 adults to meet in comfort. And we have just we have a picture taken in the evening at a candlelight service to give you a sense of what the inside of the sanctuary can be like. Our services are built around a different theme each month, and you may have noticed the slides referring to January's theme, Living with Intention. That's because I haven't made the slide for February yet. The congregation has a short mission statement, which I'll share on this slide. If you could put up slide, there we are. Our mission statement says that our mission is to provide a community that nurtures personal and spiritual growth, practices inclusiveness, celebrates diversity, affirms individual and collective commitment to community service and social justice. So in my mind, our congregation comes together for three primary reasons. The first is that sense of community and friendship. So important to us. We all need community. The second is the opportunity to learn to see the world from different perspectives, developing the skills to build bridges between people of goodwill with very different backgrounds. This is a skill that the world desperately needs now. We're in a time of tremendous polarization. And we as a religious tradition, without requiring people to adhere to a creed or dogma, are a place where people with very different backgrounds can come together and learn from one another. And the third reason we get together is to work out for ourselves what it means to lead a good life, the kind of life we will look back on with pride at the end. We've each been given this amazing experience that we call being alive in the world, in the universe. What are we going to do with our one wild and crazy life? None of those objectives or goals would be possible without maintaining goodwill within the community. And that's a particular challenge for UUs who are notoriously independent thinkers. That sense of being strong-willed, independent in thought, and outspoken is a characteristic that is baked into our DNA. But what brings us together is our long history of action in the cause of social justice, and the fact that we're not afraid to be a little unconventional. We have a number of programs ongoing at the church that people are involved in. I mentioned a few here that are specifically related to social justice. The one big and amazing program that the church has is our refugee program. We're a special agreement holder with the federal government, and we work to enable refugees coming into Canada. As a congregation, we have supported refugees directly, and we work with the other groups outside our church to help them navigate the system. And so one way or another, we are anticipating bringing more refugees into the country, substantially more than we have members in the congregation within a year. We also have a Saturday brunch program. Every Saturday morning, we have a free brunch for the neighborhood. It used to be a full sit-down buffet brunch. Since COVID, it's been takeout brown bag lunch with lately we have a bonfire in the front of the church, and we can roast some sausages outdoors. It's something for our neighbors to participate in and enjoy, and all are welcome. We have a climate crisis team that works to educate the congregation and to lobby to the extent possible to bring about change that will reduce the use of fossil fuels and the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that we know is changing our climate in ways that we can't predict. And we have a truth, healing, and reconciliation group that is established and done extensive work educating ourselves and others about the history of colonialism within Canada and the work that needs to be done to heal the relationship with the Indigenous people of this land. And I mentioned we're not afraid to be a little unconventional. So once a year, we have a Blue Christmas service. Blue Christmas meaning that not everyone is in a frame of mind to celebrate at the time of Christmas. For many people, Christmas has sad memories, unfortunate memories. It's a time in some families where family stress comes to a head, where drinking becomes a problem. It's not always happy. So we wanted to do something to recognize that, but to raise people's spirits at the same time. And so for 10 years in a row, we've had a Sunday service at Bearley's House of the Blues in Ribs, which is a few blocks away from the church. So it's one of the few, or dare I say, maybe the only church service in Halifax that's held in a local bar, but it just seemed too good an opportunity to pass up. So that's my overview of our congregation, and it's a very brief overview. When we asked members of the congregation why they participate, it's overwhelmingly for the sense of community, the sense of support. It's a wonderful group of people of about 90 adults and 12 or so children. We have a full RE program. We call it Religious Exploration Program for children, where our children are exposed to not only Unitarian Universalism, but are given an understanding of all the major faith traditions in the world, as well as an understanding of the secular problems in the world and the social justice issues that confront us. So having said that, I've really come to the end of my introduction. I hope this was a worthwhile experience for you all. If you would like to see more what a service is like, I encourage you to go to YouTube and do a search for Universalist Halifax, and you will get to our channel. And there's services there for the last 2 years that you can see in full. At the end of a service, we would normally extinguish our little chalice. And I'm going to do that now and read a few words. And then I'll check the chat and see what questions have been asked. And we'll open things up. Put everyone on, recommend that you put yourself on gallery view so you can see other people who are participating. And we'll have a bit of an open discussion. So as we end this service, may the love that overcomes all differences, that heals all wounds, that puts to flight all fears, that reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen. Okay, and now I'm going to gallery view. I'm going to have a quick look and see what's in the chats. Advice to our control room that we may have a cable going bad. I did see some flickering on the screen. That's unfortunate. I have to mention, and this is something I should have mentioned. I'll just read this. I have to mention that on October 24, 1972, long before any other church would have mentioned homosexuality or even considered gays and lesbians to be human, much less welcomed them, the Halifax Universalist Unitarian Church offered our community a space to meet and to organize. You belong at the front of the parade, and thank you. Unitarian Universalists, I like to make the claim, conducted the first same-sex weddings in Canada, which was in the 70s in Winnipeg, actually. And it wasn't technically legal, but it was legal because you could conduct a wedding provided that you read the banns, which is an old tradition. And you didn't need to have a certificate from the government to approve your wedding. So we're a welcoming congregation and have a long history in that regard. And now our biggest work is realizing that we have been, our roots, as I kind of explained, come from European, from Unitarian and Universalist thought, which largely had its origins in Europe. And we need to broaden our appeal, and hence we need to broaden our appeal. We need to be more welcoming. We need to listen to the voices of people at the margins, people who we may not have been paying attention to. So hence our 8th principle and the work that we're doing in that regard. So I see Judy has her hand raised. Just have to unmute Judy and you'll be able to speak.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have a refugee program. Could you expand on that a little more? Like, is that from when they land on Canadian soil, like through to the first year, or and like, how can people get involved or donate towards that?
I see Margaret is smiling now. Margaret's a member of our refugee committee, so I think I'll ask her to answer the question if you don't mind, Margaret.
Sure.
We're actually a sponsorship agreement holder. So we're one of the organizations who's in partnership with the government, and the government gives out a certain number of spaces each year to the sponsorship agreement holders across the country. So we tend to get maybe say 100 spaces in a year, and then it's our role to find people or refugees, whichever comes first. Each refugee has to, or each family, they're still in they have to be in a country that's not their own. They have to be someone who's not, if it's not safe for them to go back to their own country. And they have to, for our purposes, we want them to have a connection in Canada. So there's a team of people in Canada who are the ones who raise the money. and work out who's going to be responsible for the different things that have to happen for them the first year living here. And then we help them with the paperwork. We submit the paperwork to the government. The government sends the paperwork to the embassy, whichever country they're in. And with any luck, they work their way through the process and they end up in Canada, and the team looks after them for a year. It sounds sort of organized, but especially with COVID, we've had people that we've submitted applications for 3 and 4 years ago, and they still haven't come. But normally, if we're not in the COVID situation, it takes a couple of years usually for them to work their way through the whole process. But we're always happy to have somebody who wants to get involved or wants to donate funds, so we can. Probably the best thing would be if you sent an email with your information to well, might as well do it to me, I guess. So I'll put my address in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We could have an hour-long, well, more than an hour-long session just on the refugee program.
Yes. Yeah.
But we've, despite COVID, families are getting through, and we every once in a while we get to welcome people at the airport, and it's really wonderful. Dick Cotterill, I think, has his hand up.
Yes, I believe you mentioned that many of your members are agnostic or atheist. So I would, it's kind of a two-part question. Are some of your members Christian? And did the Universalist and Unitarian traditions grow out of the Christian faith?
Yeah, I'll start with the second. And they definitely did grow out of the Christian faith. They were considered by Christian orthodoxy to be heretics. Both traditions go back into the earliest Christian church. You're probably aware of the debates in the early Christian church about the nature of Jesus, and that raises all kinds of questions about the Trinity, and so there were debates about Unitarian theology back from the earliest days of the church, and it was actually settled by Constantine in the Roman Empire when he decided to consolidate things, and that there can only be one group to speak, and was the Trinitarians that carried the day. And Universalists, similarly, there's been a strain throughout Christianity that felt we're all united with God eventually. So right up in the 1800s, early 1900s, I think, well, even this congregation probably certainly early 1900s, considered itself to be primarily a Christian denomination, although they weren't necessarily welcomed by other Christian churches. But that's changed over time. And I didn't get into discussing our sources, but we consider the Christian scriptures that speak of love as one of our sources. There's a lot of other Christian scriptures that we would not, I would not, as a minister, being referring to regularly, although there's always good teaching opportunities to delve into them. But we now recognize sources from all the great religious traditions in the world, and probably more than any other from modern science, and from trying to understand and read the book of nature and recognize our place in the interdependent web of all existence. And are Christians welcome? Yes, absolutely. We don't have, there are a few members of the congregation that identify as Christian, certainly a relatively small minority. I would love to see more. I can speak frankly a little bit about the history of the church, that back in the 60s, a lot of, that's when humanism was extremely popular 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And a lot of people came to Unitarian Universalism who were really disillusioned by their experience in Christian churches, particularly LGBTQ individuals who had felt shut out and condemned in some cases from the religion that they had grown up in. And they came to Unitarian Universalism, and they came with some baggage, which was really their bad experience in a Christian church. And times have changed. Christian churches have advanced dramatically. Christian theology is a much bigger umbrella than it used to be. And so we welcome, I would love to have more members of individuals who consider themselves Christian to be part of our congregation. I hope that answers your question. I'm not seeing any other hands, or darn, I should have been more controversial. Let me see, what else could I have said that would have
Norm, there is a question from Gabby,
oh yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, in the chat. But he mostly answered what she asked.
Oh, yes, no, my sermons are generally not based on the Bible. I will use quotes from the Bible regularly, but not, I very rarely would base a sermon on a particular section of the Bible. This is where I get to claim that being Unitarian minister is really a hard job, because we don't just have one source to rely on. My colleagues and I, prior to COVID, I was meeting regularly with a group of ministers and a rabbi here in town. And we would start with a lectionary, start with a reading from the Bible, and then discuss it at length. And, you know, and it's very interesting. It's an interesting way to explore all kinds of issues. So I enjoy doing that, but there, as I say, that's only one of many sources that we would rely on. So I have to be much more prepared to bring in perhaps Buddhist thoughts. I mean, from a religious point of view, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Wiccan. There's a lot of, and indigenous. There's a lot of wonderful writing and a lot of great sources to be explored. I mentioned last Sunday, I was listening to Yuval Noah Harari, and impressed with his suggestion. And now I'm speaking as a Unitarian Universalist minister is entitled to speak. This is my own theology. It's not, I'm not going to present it as Unitarian Universalist theology because it is that is such a broad topic. But Harari makes the point that what separates humans from every other creature on the earth primarily, and what enables us to work in community, is our imagination. And all religions and all isms, I use the example of money, nationalism, national boundaries, they're all inventions of human imagination. And if we can be humble enough to see that and to recognize that fundamentally religions come from human imagination, whether it's divinely inspired or not is certainly open for discussion, but fundamentally it's the human imagination that drives humanity. And the Bible is a wonderful book to inspire your imagination. There's so much in there to explore. How does one become a UU minister? The process has been fairly well defined. It's actually now there are study groups looking to see how we can make it more welcoming, because it's more or less followed a very European, Eurocentric kind of plan. In my own case, I was a mechanical engineer for most of my life, went into ministry 13 years ago, basically. And in order to do so, I had to go to divinity school. I went to Canada School of Theology in Atlanta. There are two Unitarian Universalist schools of theology in the United States. But you're welcome to go to another fairly liberal school that would welcome a Unitarian. So you complete 3 years to get a Master of Divinity degree, basically studying the history of religion. You do a year as an intern working with a church under a fellowshipped minister, as they call it, someone who hasn't been through the process. You do the equivalent of a year's internship in hospital, working as a chaplain to get your, just the exact term escapes me right now, but to get experience in that kind of pastoral care. And then you have to go before a board for kind of a final exam, the fellowship board, to answer questions and to determine that you have completed all the work necessary, which includes a whole bunch of reading that people are going to ask you questions on. And you can be sent back for more study before you're finally approved. So all of that is not very accessible to someone who doesn't have financial resources. To do 3 years university at postgraduate level, work as an intern for a year, which is at very low pay, is just not very accessible unless you're coming from a pretty fortunate background. And so the church is looking into saying, how do we welcome more people from more diverse backgrounds into ministry? And that's an ongoing project within the denomination, but that's how you get there under present circumstances. I should also say, I didn't make this clear, that like some other denominations, like Baptists, we have congregational polity. There are no bishops. There's no hierarchy in the church above the congregation. The congregation has the full authority to do what they believe is correct. Now, there's an association of congregations, and if you really got too far out of line, you could be, your congregation could be excluded from the association of congregations, but I don't recall that happening anytime in my lifetime. But I mention that because theoretically, a congregation can call anyone as their minister if they choose to do so. But we have this process of training ministers and making sure that our ministers are coming in well qualified and prepared to deal with trials and tribulations of ministry and to effectively serve their congregations. I see a comment that Wiccan is thought to be devil worshiping in some Christian circles, mistaken Christian circles, I would have to say. I don't think that's an accurate interpretation of Wicca at all. Much more an earth-centered tradition. I would argue that the product of human imagination, but human imagination really deeply embedded in the world that we live in. When you are in the forest, when you're beside a river, when you're looking at a majestic mountain, if you don't feel the spirits present, then maybe you're lacking some imagination. Do we have creeds or sacraments? Absolutely not. There's one rule. If I wanted to start a new church in Yarmouth or anywhere, there is only one rule. that's hard and fast. And that's that there shall be no test of creed, no test of belief. We cannot turn anyone away from membership in the congregation because of what they believe. We can turn them away based on their behavior. And I don't want to get into, theoretical arguments about someone who believes some horrible thing, but manages to cover it up or behave okay. That just doesn't, that's sort of a non-issue. We really do welcome people of all religious beliefs or none, and we do not have a creed that anyone is required to believe. I did mention in the service the 8 principles that we have, and those guide the work of our congregations and the work of our association of congregations, but they're not a creed. They're nothing that people are required to believe or to adhere to. So I hope that answers your question. It's a challenge when people want to know, well, what do Unitarian Universalists believe, or what is it that holds the group together? I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's the idea of community. It's the idea that we're all trying to figure out what it means to lead a good life, and that we can learn from each other, and that you can, in fact, build a community of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse traditions. So you're all welcome to attend our services. As I say, they're online on YouTube. This Sunday, actually, I meant to ask this. Well, they did ask it and I didn't get an answer. We would normally be doing our services at 10:30 every Sunday morning. And right now they're all online until Dr. Strang changes the regulations. But this Sunday, we're having a national service at 2 p.m. So there are Unitarian Universalists from across Canada that will be joining into one service at 2 p.m. If anyone would like a link to that service, if you'd like to sit in and watch a national service, might be a very good way to get a exposure to to our faith tradition. If you would send me an email, I could share that link with you. I'll put my email into the chat right now. If it's not available anywhere else, I'm not sure. Margaret, is there a better way to do this?
Not that I know of. And the email that I got had your email address in it, the one about this service, but it was spelled wrong. So perhaps you should put it in the chat again.
Okay, there it is. So it's Ann, my first initial, Horofker, my last name, at AOL.com. That's how old I am. I'm still using AOL, America Online. My younger colleagues always call me out on that, showing my age. Well, I thank you all for attending. And I hope to see you somewhere, sometime, ideally at a Unitarian Universalist service, just dropping in to see what's going on. We do have a really useful listserv. The church 2 or 3 times a week will send out just official information from the church. One of those is always what the upcoming service is about. Others might relate to a social justice activity underway, whatever. What I'm getting at is there's not a lot of emails coming from it. And we would welcome anyone who would like to be signed up just to get an email from us to know what's going on. It might, who knows where that might lead. So again, if you contact me via email, I'd be happy to add you to the listserv, and you can delete yourself from that at any time if it becomes something that's not really of interest to you. So thank you all. And I just got a shout out to Gary Hiller there. He's looking very good and very comfortable. We miss you, Gary. We're going to be building a new deck this summer if you want to come back.
Hi, Norm. It's great to hear your presentation tonight. Since I've had some dealings with your church there a couple of years ago, I've been following you all along, and I find much inspiration on you and your church and what you're doing, and the various activities. Wild and crazy as some of them are, it's just beautiful to see. And I've heard that you may be moving on, and you'll be sorely missed.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm planning to retire at the end of the church years. So I have two grandchildren and one 1 month away from being born. So that's a certain. The universe is telling me it's time to concentrate on my family and grandchildren.
Yeah, fair enough. And maybe I'll talk to you about the deck.
Oh, love to have that conversation. Okay, I hate to close the meeting when people are still there. Is that Jim Hall? Is that the Jim that contacted me from the?
Yes, yeah.
Ah, Jim.
Yes, yeah, thanks for having us again this year. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I hope this is what you had in mind.
Yeah,
It's so hard to know what to do under present circumstances.
yeah, of course.
Next year, we'll all be back, and you'll all be welcome to come into the church, because we would always have coffee after the service. I didn't mention that. If we have a sacrament, that's it. That's have a cup of coffee or tea after the service, and talk about the minister. Well, thank you all, and I'm going to say good night, and God bless. Take care.
Right.